their nests and swarmed her body, stinging and biting her over 200 times. Fire ant venom, known as solanopsin, stimulates the nervous system. The overwhelming amount of it that was injected into her body kept her heart beating until paramedics arrived, saving her life. Margaret Guire. Margaret was a young Canadian woman who had just married her husband, Herbert, in 1915. To celebrate, they decided to take a trip and boarded the RMS Lusitania in New York City, bound for Liverpool. They were enjoying their trip, having a routine dinner on the ship, when suddenly they heard a loud boom. The ship had been torpedoed by a German submarine. Herbert immediately escorted his wife Margaret to a lifeboat, where she was joined by 3 other women and a baby. However, as she looked up, she saw the ship's massive smokestacks above them, and she feared they might collapse onto their lifeboat. In a moment of panic, she climbed back up the stairs to the deck, while Herbert, believing she was safe, boarded another lifeboat with other passengers. As the Lusitania rapidly sank, Margaret tried to swim away from the wreckage, but her efforts were in vain. A whirlpool formed as the ship submerged, pulling her and 2 other men into one of the smokestacks. Miraculously, a sudden explosion from below blasted her back to the surface, where she was spotted and rescued by a nearby lifeboat. As she looked around, she saw Herbert in another lifeboat crying, believing she had died. Julie McSorley. Julie McSorley and Liz Cottrell were kayaking in San Luis Obispo, California, drawn by a spectacular event, humpback whales feeding on fish in the bay. There were lots of tourists on their boats and kayaks watching the whole thing. And even though whale watching is a popular activity, it comes with important safety precautions. Experts recommend staying at least 300 feet away from the feeding zone to avoid dangerous encounters. Unfortunately, Julie and Liz misjudged the distance. A tightly packed swarm of fish, known as a bait ball, suddenly moved alarmingly close to them. But they weren't the only ones to notice. Their presence had also caught the attention of a humpback whale. Before they had time to react, the whale lunged forward to swallow the fish, but in the process, it also scooped up Julie and Liz. Trapped inside its massive mouth, they probably thought that they were about to be swallowed whole. After all, humpback whales can grow up to 56 feet long, a huge size from a human perspective. However, despite their enormous mouths, humpback whales have relatively small throats, only about the size of a human fist and capable of stretching to just 15 inches in diameter. They also lack teeth, meaning the 2 women weren't crushed. Luckily, a whale's natural instinct is to spit out anything that isn't fish, and that's exactly what happened. Moments later, Julie and Liz were spat out from the whale's mouth and surfaced unharmed. Matthew Lowe. Matthew was heading to his factory for a routine shift, just like any other day. Upon arriving, he immediately got to work. As he walked past an automated conveyor belt, he suddenly felt his overalls snag on something. Unfortunately, it was the conveyor itself. Before he could react, he was pulled onto the belt and dragged toward a 5-inch opening. Within seconds, his entire body was forced through the narrow tunnel. He could hear the cracks of his bones as the machine spat him out on the other side.